the prospective joining of Sweden and Finland to NATO is all but inevitable because the actions by the United States have started a domino effect in the Baltic region and larger Europe. And I think that we have to contextualize history when we talk about what is happening in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. In 1990, James Baker, the then US Secretary of State, committed to Gorbachev that the United States will not expand NATO eastwards. And that commitment, that promise was not kept. And as we know it, NATO was expanded slowly and gradually eastwards towards Russia. And all major stakeholders, including at that time the United States, acknowledged and conceded that Russia had legitimate security interests and concerns with the prospective enlargement of NATO. In any case, NATO's relevance was with the original Cold War, which ended after the breakup of the Soviet Union. And NATO was used during that time by both sides for their own interests and against each other, the two blocs of the original Cold War. So the relevance of NATO post-Cold War itself diminished, but we see that NATO is being revived, enlarged, strengthened for interests that are beyond the North Atlantic region. As we know, NATO is an organization of countries which is within the North Atlantic. However, if you look at the 2030 plan of NATO, which was unveiled recently, NATO in 2030 as it is called, the two major challenges that it lists are number one, Russia, and number two, China. And that strikes to me as strange and intriguing and uncanny because China is not in the North Atlantic. China is an Asian power. It's in Asia. So why is China a challenge or an adversary for NATO, for countries which are in the North Atlantic? So we see that the Cold War mentality is being proliferated, transcended, and enlarged into Europe by using NATO and by reorienting NATO's purpose, NATO's utility, and NATO's target. So the target of NATO is now shifting and becoming synonymous and shared with that of the United States of America, which I think is a cause of structural, long-term instability for Europe. And what we have seen in the Middle East by the invasions of Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, where the social fabric of society, standard of living, and conflict has destroyed the whole region, unfortunately, we see the same mistakes, the same mentality of a zero-sum game being now applied in Europe. I can't help but remember and quote the ambassador of the United States to Russia, George F. Kennan, who was the ambassador during the Cold War of the US to Russia and who was the author of the famous The Long Telegram, which has become a reference point in international relations, students, universities. The article that he wrote in 1997 in the New York Times called A Fateful Error. And in that article, A Fateful Error, George Kennan, top US diplomat, said that the single largest fateful error by the United States post-Cold War would be of expanding NATO. And it seems that that fateful error is being made, that error is taking place, and it is being accelerated. And George Kennan, in his article in 1997 in the New York Times, stated that it would have far-reaching long-term consequences not only for the other countries involved, but for the United States itself. And it will be the single largest fateful error after the Cold War that the US would commit. So It is inevitable that this atmosphere of insecurity has led other countries that were previously non-aligned, like Sweden and Finland, to now join NATO, and the Russia-US conflict, the larger confrontation that is seen in Russia-Ukraine confrontation, but the larger context of the US containment of Russia as well as China is now seen and being played out in other countries. And I think that this has to stop unless the world is prepared and we want more conflict, which as the post-pandemic world order plays out, I think human security, preventing further pandemics, health infrastructure, and people's well-being should be the collective priority of the world.